Hello everyone, welcome back to another video here on Keep Running with BK, and in today's video I'm going to be talking about training for a half marathon. So whether you are looking to move up in distance from say a 10K to the half marathon, or you've been running for a long time and you have a pretty well established foundation and you're looking to run a fast half marathon, I've got some insights and tips to share with you right after this. Alright, again, welcome to another video here on Keep Running with BK, and I just want to give a quick shout out to all of the new subscribers to the channel. I really appreciate your support, and slowly but surely we're picking up some momentum here on this fairly new channel. And I also want to give a quick shout out to a coworker and friend of mine who asked for my logo and threw it on a shirt here for me, and I really appreciate that. And we're working on some ideas potentially for later on down the road for the channel, but I just want to give a quick shout out to him. I really like it. I know we've got a few tweaks to make, but we'll take care of that. So in today's video I'm going to be talking specifically about half marathon training. I've been doing a series of videos on various training distances, so if you're interested in the 5K, the 10K, or even looking at my specific marathon training plan, then check out the show notes where I've got some links to those particular videos. Now, when we talk about the half marathon, it's a little bit of a tricky distance to talk about when it comes to training, because it's very dependent upon where you are in your current level of fitness and conditioning and your ability, to be honest with you. What do I mean by that? So if you're fairly new to running, or you've been primarily just training for 5Ks and 10Ks, then how you approach training for a half marathon is very different. It's very similar to, say, training for your first marathon, where you're going to spend some time building your mileage. You need to add more mileage to your week in order to prepare yourself to be able to run that. On the other hand, if you've been running for a long time and you've got a pretty strong foundation, consistent weekly mileage, and you're even running weekly long runs that are equivalent to the half marathon or even beyond, then you're going to be doing less building for the conditioning and the volume of training needed to run a half marathon, and really focus more on developing your speed to be able to run a fast time. And your training is going to look more like a 10K. So I'm going to approach this video a little different. I'm going to have timestamps in the show notes where you can jump to the various chapters in the video if there is a particular piece to the video that you're more interested than others. So some of the basics really for any distance runner, for any distance that you're training for, is first off, make sure that your easy days are easy. It's during these times where you're really allowing your body to recover from the harder efforts. It's allowing you to develop the slow twitch fibers, muscle fibers, which are key and critical to any distance runner. And personally, I use the MAF, or maximum aerobic function approach, developed by Dr. Phil Maffetone, for my easy runs, because it really has taught me what easy should feel like. The other critical thing for any distance runner is to make sure that you're getting enough rest and recovery throughout the week. That means good sleep, and make sure you're prioritizing that. It means keeping those easy days easy so that you have the opportunity to recover. But it also means listening to your body, and sometimes it means calling off a hard day to make sure that you're getting the rest you need, because you're not fully recovered. And when you have full recoveries, when you do those hard efforts, you're able to maintain the quality of those sessions and put in the hard effort that you need to really get the most out of those. I think it's also important to point out that it is in these rest periods, when you're recovering in between runs, that improvement really happens. as we're running, and whether it's easy or hard, we're basically breaking down the body. We're getting micro tears in the muscle fibers, and it's during these rest periods that the body repairs itself, heals itself, and it becomes stronger. And those micro adaptations that are going on within our body are occurring, and that's where we improve as runners. The third thing that every distance runner should have as a key component of their weekly training regimen is making sure that they have a long run built into their week. That's going to vary depending on what your running goals are, what distance you're training for, or even your current ability. And that can vary from runner to runner. For some, a long run is 3 miles or 5 miles. For others, it may be 10, 15, or 20, or maybe they're measuring it based on time and they're running for 45 minutes or an hour, hour and a half, 2, 3 hours. It really depends on where you're at and what your abilities really are. So now I'd like to talk to those of you who are wanting to move up to the half marathon distance, or you've been away for quite a while and you want to build up to a half marathon. There's a few things that you need to keep in mind. And the first thing you want to do is evaluate your current workload, which essentially is your current frequency. How many times a week are you able to run, and how much mileage you're doing during those runs or over the course of the week. And see what kind of adjustments you need to make, because as you move up to this distance, what's different than say a 5K or a 10K is you really need to have more volume and a solid foundation so that you can run for an hour and a half to 2 hours, or maybe even more, in order to complete the distance. And so the two main options that you really have is, can you add another day into your weekly routine, or maybe even 2 days, or are you maxed out in the number of days and you need to look at where can I add mileage to my weekly routine. The majority of that mileage is going to be added on to or built up over a period of time, possibly 6 to 12 weeks, depending on where you're starting from, to build up your long run. So for me personally, I typically run 5 to 6 miles 4 times a week. And then for my long runs, I would, once I've kind of get to that level, my long runs, I start stretching by adding a mile or 2 per week until I reach, say, 10 to 12 miles. And then I can start maybe doing some adjustments from there. Key thing to think about as you're adding a day or 2 to your week, or you're adding mileage onto your long run, is you don't want to expand your weekly mileage by more than, say, 10% week to week. In other words, you don't want to add a lot of mileage really fast, and then you risk adding additional stress that your body's not ready to handle, and then therefore you incur an injury, which then sidelines you, and then you're just basically starting over and you get frustrated. So be aware of that as you add mileage to your week, that you don't increase by more than 10% week to week. And then the goal here is, in order to get ready to be able to run your first half marathon, you should be able to run at least 10 miles for that long run. I would recommend trying to build up to 10 to 12. The thing about building your endurance and building up your weekly mileage to run this type of distance is, you still can recover fairly well over the course of the week, which is slightly different than when you're training for a marathon. When you're training for a marathon and you're doing 14, 16, 18, or even 20 mile long runs in there, sometimes it can take a little bit more time to recover. And so that's why you kind of step your long runs over, say, a 3 or 4 week period, and then you drop back, and you've got this cycle that you add to it in order to be able to recover. Because remember, that's one of those critical points for all distance runners is, we need to get sufficient recovery in order to continue to develop and build up to our goal race. But for a half marathon, You know, running 10, 12 miles for a long run, you should be able to fully recover during the week if you keep your daily runs at an easy effort and you're getting sufficient sleep. The other thing to keep in mind as you bump up to the half marathon and beyond is you start to get into where you're running some of your runs for an hour or longer. You're going to be racing for an hour and a half to 2.5 hours depending on where your current ability is, and you need to start thinking about, how do I rehydrate during my long runs and race, as well as do I need to supplement my fuel needs, like taking a gel or something along those means. So this is something you need to be thinking about and working out and experimenting with in your training, so you see what works for you. Some folks find that taking certain gels give them stomach cramps. Taking on hydration, be it water or some sort of sports drink, what have you, during your run does take practice. It does take some getting used to and learning how much your body is able to take on and handle. You know, something you want to work out in your training and not the day of your race. And it's just good practice to get into. So that may look like carrying a water bottle. It may look at maybe getting a water belt that carries it for you, or even wearing a vest where you can put a soft flask or maybe some smaller water bottles in, and carry your gels and that sort of thing. But this type of thing is maybe a new consideration for you as you move up to the half marathon, and something to give thought to. Now lastly, I really want to speak to those of you who are looking to race a half marathon, perhaps for a fast time. If you're like me, your weekly mileage is at a sufficient level where you could potentially run a half marathon, long run, or longer, fairly comfortable, fairly frequent, fully recover, and your goal really is, how do I now run it faster? So now you're looking at growing and being comfortable with uncomfortability, or training more like you would for a 10K. That involves incorporating lots of threshold or tempo runs into your training plan. Now it's really important that when you're doing threshold or tempo runs, regardless of how you break it up or how you incorporate that into your training, that it doesn't exceed 10% of your weekly mileage. That way you're not incorporating too much hard effort and risking stress on the body that it's not able to completely recover, and therefore, again, undercutting what your goal is, or you risk injury. So keep that in mind. And if you want to do more hard effort, then what you really need to do is, as you probably already know and understand, you need to increase your volume, which is something you want to do carefully, gradually, and primarily with easy running until your body adapts before you start hammering away on the track or on the roads or on the trails. The other thing, if you're looking to actually race a 10K and you're going for time, it's important to consider how much time to give yourself for a proper taper. For instance, for a marathon, I usually incorporate a 3-week taper. For half marathon, maybe 1 to 2 weeks taper. Since I'm already comfortably running that distance every week, I don't feel like I need as much of a taper. But what you're doing is you're cutting back your mileage, 10, 15, 20% each week leading up to it, just to give your body that little bit of more rest, to give yourself a chance to kind of recharge and come into that race with fresh legs. So again, I want to thank all of you for checking out this training video, and I'd really like for you to share in the comments, what's your half marathon training goal? Is it just to complete your first half marathon? Is it to get back to the half marathon? Or do you have a time goal, and what is the main focus of your training, and how has that been going? Do you have any other tips that maybe you would share with others in the Keep Running community? I'd appreciate you share that and allow us to get to know what everybody else is doing. If you found value in this video, please click the like button. If you like what you've heard here and you're interested in checking out other videos, consider subscribing and clicking on the bell so you receive notifications of future videos. I'd love to get to know you. I'd love to continue to grow the Keep Running community so that we can learn from one another. And my goal on the channel here really is to share with you running insights, training tips, and motivation just to help you to keep running. This Saturday I'll be running a half marathon time trial, and I will be recording that and sharing a video on how that goes next week. So make sure to check back with the channel and see how that goes. Alright, until next time, stay safe, train smart, and keep running.